Monday at 11. And that is how my brain works. And I always offer replays in case Monday mornings are not where your brain comes alive. Let's see. Come on in. Come on in. It's nice to see everyone. Let me take a look. Okay, so I'm trying something new. At the top of your screen, you should see a poll. There's a fun poll. It's like a purple square. It looks like a data square with some dots on it. Just trying to get get a sense of like where folks think their readers are at right now. And the response will appear without your name attached to it. So you can answer honestly. Just gonna get a pulse. Good morning, or good afternoon. I know we've got folks kind of around the world right now. All right. It's so nice to see everyone. Well, you know, we didn't tech check, Jen. It's how you share your screen.
Oh, to share my screen.
Were you going to share your screen?
I can when I need to. I didn't. Yeah.
Okay.
It's needed.
Cool. Come on in, folks. We've got a poll launched this morning.
Now I feel like I got to clean up my desktop a little bit. Move stuff over to my other screen.
You can share a tab. So you could just share a tab if you want to just show a tab. Come on in. It's so nice to see everyone. Come in. I'm going to give us another 60 seconds and we're going to dive in because Jen is wonderful.
Where is the share screen? Oh, here it is. That's the share screen.
Yeah, it's like well, I'm going to point at it, but
yeah, I got it. I got it.
Yeah. All right. Nice to see everyone. Okay, well, I'm going to do a quick introduction. So it's the second Monday of the month, which means it's time for office hours. And in our publishing mentorship, we meet once a month on the second Mondays because I find that there's like a way that most brains work that they need to step into strategy so that the creative flow of their work isn't just always bombarded with like, try this hack and shift here this way. So office hours are a place where you kind of like think through publication metrics, publication structure. Your folks bring their questions around like what they're actually building. And this is just a chance to like get up to like 30,000 foot view of what you're building, hopefully week over week from a really creatively juicy place. And I opened up today because Jen and I have been chatting about how she's been using Subsite, which is a tool that I created. We're not going to go into all the details, but basically it's a way to create an editorial brain. I think, Jen, you came up with that phrase that she ended up coming in and playing with her data in a way that actually helped create an editorial sort of counterpart for her and how she's thinking about growing her readership. But she did it in a very quintessential Jen way. It was very interesting, and I felt it would be also very applicable to most of the people who come in and out of the mentorship because we don't tend to want hacks. We want creative ground to be productive. Mm-hmm. And so we're kind of defining that for our community right now. What does that look like to grow your readership without becoming wonky? We've got a lot of folks coming in. I'm going to keep my eye on the admit button, but I am going to, can everybody see Jen or do you just see me while I'm talking right now?
I'm here waving my hand.
Okay.
Okay.
You can see Jen.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm going to hand it over to Jen. She's going to walk us through her editorial brain and how she has been using Subsite to grow, and she can tell you about what she writes about too. Right.
Hi, my name is Jen. I'm here in Seattle, Washington, and I've been on Substack since the summer of 2022. I've been a longtime writer. I've done writing, on teams. I've done my own personal writing. I came to Substack actually between jobs. I tend to take on some extra creative projects when I'm in between work, just to kind of explore new things that have nothing to do with what I had been doing. And so I heard about Substack and popped on and instantly loved it. And I've just been writing. I'm sort of I don't know what you would call it, like a memoir, personal narrative writer. And I've meandered through some topics a little bit. And then now I've landed on, I've actually been working on a parenting memoir. And so I've sort of honed down on some topics that are pretty related to what I'm writing in my book. All that to say, I am not formally trained in any sort of editorial or journalistic practices. I'm just me writing on the internet. I have done many years of messaging strategy and stuff in my career, but and so that's kind of what I come to Substack, is just sort of my personal project. And so when so a lot of the stuff that I've been doing up until recently has been just popcorn writing topics and not really understanding or paying attention to the data behind stuff. Like, I know it's important, I know things to look out for, but I was having a hard time kind of making sense of what was working and what was not working. I have a lot of hunches about things, and I follow a lot of anecdotal sort of things. And so when I dove into using Subsite, I was really pretty quickly amazed by how it helped me make sense of my own. It was reflecting my data back to me in a way that was narrative, and it gave names to things and shapes to things. And so, when I mentioned that I don't have formal training in anything, I've scrapped together skills and things for my toolbox. But I think a formal education has sometimes limited my language around frameworks and things that I may have learned along the way. And so Subsite is helping to give shape to some of those things and to name some of the things that I have instinct about and hunches about. And so it really opened up a lot of understanding about what the numbers in my dashboard mean, and then how different things that I was doing in my newsletter were working and not working. So that's a little blurb about me up front and where I've come from. So let's see where to start. When I first went into Subsite, so I downloaded, what was it, the subscriber data first, Amanda?
We started there with the subscriber data.
Yeah, the subscriber data. So I put it in there, and then I just started asking it some basic questions. I kind of almost like, when you watch the crime shows and they do lie detector tests and they ask all those baseline questions of just to see how so I just kind of wanted to ask it a few questions and see what it was doing. And then and it sorry, I lost my train of thought here. So I asked a question like, it showed me what my top performing posts were. And so I was like building on these top posts, what should I write about for my next 3 posts? So I was just kind of asking it, what should I write about next? Or what's turning readers off in my writing? Or can you suggest a 4 to 5 week publishing schedule that includes topic ideas and type of post? And so it did. It pumped out this stuff. It gave me like, well, here's a potential schedule, a workflow for your week and all of this. And I was like, okay, what's a content calendar? I could do that. Like, for me, understanding a content calendar wasn't the challenge, but it was interesting to see that it would put that out there. So then I started asking it a little bit more editorial questions, such as what are themes that connect my top performing posts? What connects my lower performing posts? What should I consider letting go of? And I was just curious what it would start talking to me about or reflecting back to me. And it identified patterns in how my writing was connecting well with other readers. It used things like, and then the things that weren't working, like my lower performing posts, it was saying things like it was naming things like the observer participant voice, or saying things like high narrative specificity. And that's, and then things that weren't working were things that were like high concept theoretical stuff, right? And so I was beginning to understand that it was pinpointing these patterns of where, when I would be specific and vulnerable, and where I would admit my mistakes in parenting and things like that, those were things that the reader data showed that my readers were responding to. But when I put out there some of these like sort of preachy, teachy, explainer, high concept type things, the engagement and things were not, people weren't responding as well to it. So it really started to help give shape and name to the hunches that I was having, and maybe even things that I wasn't quite connecting a dot on. It helped to connect those. And the other thing that I really appreciated about the experience was that it was putting things into categories or names in a way that made it a little bit more narrative, right? Like, the observer participant voice type thing. Like that was telling me that when I'm, I have a career where I do a lot of explaining, like a lot of technical writing, a lot of explaining programs. I'm a fundraiser, I do grant writing. And so I'm always explaining how a program works, how it benefits things and all this. And I wanted to bring into my newsletter a more personal, relational connection, but I was still having a hard time letting go of that professional voice that I have in my other writing. And so I wanted to let go of that. And so some of the questions I was asking subsite at the beginning was actually bringing up some of these patterns that I was already aware of, and it was providing some examples of what to do or some suggestions of how to shift that voice, it really helped me sort of make that connection in my brain.
Hey, Jen.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I'm curious about, so if we put like your writing into like two buckets, you were kind of seeing like, you've got this more relational voice that's coming through, and you're seeing data around that, and you're seeing like the data behind like the explainer voice.
Mm-hmm.
What was like your process for writing those? Did one take more energy from you? Did one feel more natural to you? I'm putting you on the spot here. We didn't talk about this before.
Yeah.
You're talking, I feel like part of the thing that we run into is that like, how do we sustain our creative energy? And I'm just wondering like what your feelings were about that. Like what was it taking to publish one versus the other?
Yeah, I think my voice is pretty consistent through all of my writing. You could put on a jacket of professionalism, right? So when I write professionally, or when I write these explainer things, I think the shift I was making or feeling in my creative energy was more around like a thing that I was feeling or experiencing or communicating through my writing. I was having a hard time wrapping that up with a bow and being like, and here's the lesson we learned from that, right? And so I kept falling into this thing of like, well, I don't know what people are going to take away from this. What am I offering? And I think for me, as a memoir personal narrative writer, there's a lot of people writing on the internet that have something to offer. And so my brain kept trying to get into, well, what am I offering people? So I was trying to offer my readers a lesson to be learned, some instruction or some sort of mentorship thing. And that part felt icky to me. Like here I am telling a very personal story. I like to think I'm funny. Some of the stuff I write is humor, and the pickles I get myself into, and things like that. And then I would sort of wrap up at the end with like, and here's the lesson, the more you know, from the Saturday morning TV. And that part I didn't really like, because that's not how I wanted to show up on my newsletter. And so what I learned through some of my strategy questions within the tool was that a utility lens, right? So shifting me from an instructive lens to a utility lens, which is like, here's what's working for me. And then instead of passing along a lesson to somebody who may be reading, it was more of like inviting someone into a new way of thinking about something or a new way of looking at something. So that was a shift that helped. with my own creative energy of like, this doesn't feel like me to wrap something up in this way. But when I started to see a different way to present sort of the structure of my stories, that gave me a lot of creative energy and a lot of creative life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, because sometimes when I chat with folks like that are feeling burnt out, it's because they're pushing themselves into a mode of writing that's not actually creatively generative. And if we can just find like a door of permission to be like, well, if it's draining you and also the data is saying it's not really even working, can we set that aside and reorganize around a different principle? So I was just curious if the writing that you've kind of been orienting toward, if it feels, I'm going to say the word easier, but that's not quite the goal, but like, does it feel different?
Here's two things that came up that were really eye-opening to me. And this is a direct quote from sort of the evaluation of what some of the things I was asking. It says there's a very clear sensibility that your readers are responding to. So referring to like just the general sensibility of my stuff. And then high performing essays are nostalgic, humorous, and slightly self-deprecating personal essays. And so that affirmed to me what I already knew. Like I already knew that was a lane. Like I've heard the singer Maggie, I can't remember what her name is, but anyway, there was a, like this term of like being professionally vulnerable. Like I've always been the kind of person who's willing to say the quiet thing out loud on the internet. And so that was the sensibility that I connected with. And then some of the things that it came back with that weren't working were Maggie Rogers, thank you. Some of the things that came back to me that it would compare some of the data, like it would say, these posts got so many likes and so many comments. This suggests your voice isn't just being read, it's being felt. And so it was recognizing that some of the more feeling type essays were having a higher response. And so that just sort of allowed me to relax a little bit into letting my stories live in the world without offering some kind of a lesson, right? It took the pressure off me creatively, energy-wise, to feel like I had to give somebody a lesson and to just let the story speak for itself and let others see themselves in the story. And when I do that, they tend to be a little bit more engaged with, however you want to measure that. Like I feel good writing those, and it seems like people respond to them differently than when I'm like, here's a lesson. And it was a real struggle for me last year because there's a lot of things that were happening in our country and in our current administration that impacted my work directly in my professional life. And so I was feeling this pull in my newsletter to start explaining the world to people about what was going on. And that, because that's what I do for work. And then I was sort of losing my way a little bit last year because I was leaning heavily into the explainer side, and it was like really off topic from what I normally wrote. And so Subsite came along kind of right as I was making that transition out of that sort of frenzy in my creative life and trying to refocus back again to like, what are the things that give me creative energy, and how can I efficiently spend my time writing things that I want to write about, but in a way that will be received and feel rewarding to me, because I have a full-time job. So I'm doing this on the weekends. I'm doing it, in the mornings, squeezing it in various margins of my life. And so it's really helped me to think more strategically in a very efficient way about how to shape the things that I want to talk about in a way that is kind of efficient for me to implement.
Yeah. So that's a bit about like the editorial brain of it. The questions you've asked. I think those are really helpful. I think in the transcript we'll be able to pull those for folks. If you want to jump in and ask Subsite the same questions about your data, you can do that after the call. You and I talked beforehand about like kind of your approach to like getting folks, what was it? I really liked the phrasing, getting them to the campfire, or getting to the, getting them to the camp, getting them from like out here to in here. And obviously, like, I think, I think the type of person who typically comes in to hang out in the publishing spectrum isn't interested in like standard wonky trick you into engaging kind of things. Like, we're pretty relationally forward. But I don't think that means that strategy can't be, you can't be intentional with how you invite folks. And I think you've been doing that well and using data to help you think through like what actually helps someone want to engage. And so I'm going to just open that door for you to talk a little bit about that.
So one of the things that Subsite revealed was, I think the numbers were there all along, but it was like, again, reflecting it back to me in a narrative way that I could understand. It showed me that I had like, I have about over 600 subscribers, and like 78 were active readers. So there's a huge chunk of lowering, less engagement, but there's like 78 core readers. And that actually just really made me smile, because I have some longtime friends that I've made on Substack, and when they like or comment, like, these are all names I recognize. So when folks are commenting on my posts, it's like I get excited to see their names, because we've been hanging on Substack for a couple of years, and some are local and I've met a few in person. And so that just really named something for me, and it got me thinking about, and also in my personal life and in somewhat in my professional life, I'm a community builder. So we actually have a garden in our front yard. And so I meet a lot of my neighbors and a lot of people walking their dogs, because I'm outside a lot in the front yard gardening. And then we have a fire pit in our backyard that's covered with a big pavilion. And we invite folks over once a week for fire nights, and it's open. We just have, like, if the thing is out on the curb, we're having fire night tonight, and folks can invite friends, and it's just this weekly thing that we do. And we do a question of the week, and kind of keeps us from getting into a small talk trap, and we just really get to know one another. And so that's the kind of environment that I've been trying to build through my newsletter, is like an online version of that. And so I started thinking about, when you get into sort of the jargon of, audience stuff, it's like, moving people through a pipeline and getting them closer to, but I was thinking of it more of like, who are the folks walking by the sidewalk of my front yard garden? Who stops and chats with me through the fence, and, I've got lots of those where we wave while they're walking their dog. And then who ventures up to my front porch and we sit and have some lemonade on the front porch, and then who ventures back into my backyard and we're sitting around the fire and really getting into it. And so I think of those 78 readers roughly, as the people who we hang around the fire pit. They show up every week around the fire pit of my comments. And so that's how I started thinking about it. And through some of my questions in Subsite, it was picking up on that. And so I started to think of it as a neighborhood map, of like moving the folks that encounter my newsletter. Like, how can we move each other closer, not just for the sake of like accumulating, and collecting readers for my data set, but more of like, I love what I talk about and I love the conversations, and I want more people to be involved because I think it's fun and exciting. And so one of the things that I've done through Subsite is to have it, I've been, I don't know if codifying is the right word, but I've been having it develop some checklists for me, because I have found that I don't want to ask it questions like, if I put a draft in or if I put some information in there, I don't want to ask it, is this good? Or does this work? Because I don't want it to kind of tell me what I want to hear. And so through a course of back and forth, I've developed a relational resonance checklist. And so we've established it's 6 points. Every time I write a draft, I'll put it in there and I'll say, please run this draft through the relational resonance checklist. And it'll come back with this whole thing: pass, excellent, strong, needs work. And then it'll give me some suggestions. And so then I can make some tweaks to it. Another one I've done is the neighborhood map. And I'll say, can you help, I want to make sure that this speaks to the sidewalk, to the sidewalk crowd, people who are headline surfing. Is this a good essay for, for that? And so it'll help me sort of tweak. So I'm telling the story the way I want to tell it, but then there's sometimes just a few tweaks you can make either in the title or in some sort of call to action, where it can be like, this will apply to, like, this is for the porch people, or this is for the fire pit people. Like, let's gather around and have this conversation. But then maybe another post will be more like, hey, if you're walking by my headline, I'd love for you to come in and check it out. And then, so it gets me thinking. So these frameworks that I've set up within it that I can run all of my stuff through, I could say, check it for the relational resonance. And that's mostly for me checking my voice, my tone, and making sure I'm not going into like this instructive mode. And then I run it through a neighborhood map, which ensures that, that each essay I'm putting out there has a job to do in terms of who I'm connecting with in my audience. And then I've been using it to start developing like a nurturing checklist of like what to do after the post goes live. Because again, I'm just me. I'm just writing this in between my job. I try to post these on Wednesday morning and then I go do my job. And I don't have time to like live on notes and to do a lot of promotional stuff. So I'm starting to develop a checklist for a post-publish routine where it'll suggest, different ways to put stuff out in notes. And then I can just sort of check in with that and throughout the week, develop some things around that. So it's really helped me. So those are some of the ways that I've been using it to sort of help me with my limited time that I have be more efficient with how I'm writing stuff and putting it out there. So I don't know. Where do you want me to go?
But it sounds like you're having fun. It sounds like you're having fun. I am ADD. And so there are times when I really get into my hyper focus of just like, oh, and then I want to know this, and then I want to know that. And so there was a lot of that. Oh, and one thing I will say is that, you've set it up to where you can re-upload your data again in 30 days. And so I've just done that over the last week. I've been able to upload my data a second time because, this is a new tool. So I'm able to start doing a little bit of comparing or like, what's changed and that sort of thing. And one of the things that it came up with that was actually really interesting, because if you remember, I mentioned that there was a core group of readers who are very active and involved. And then there's like a whole bunch of unengaged readers. And so, as I've been sort of making some changes and to the topics and essays and things that I'm talking about, it identified that I lost subscribers, right? It's ticked down, and it helped me think through the fact that this is healthy churn, because it was able to identify through my data that regular engaged readers were not dropping off. It was the unengaged readers. So as I've been making this transition from these other topics into new topics over the course of the last couple of months, people have been dropping off, but it just really made me feel like, all right, those aren't my people. I'm making these changes. It's not for them. And it helped me think through what is a healthy churn and like almost a list cleanup. And so that helped my creative mindset to not be so discouraged by losing subscribers. It really helped to show me, to reflect the data back to me in a way that was like, oh, these are the unengaged readers that are dropping off. And so that's actually going to help you in the long run. So yeah, I feel like knowing, it's much easier to know like the arc of your life as a writer will mean that some books will be for some people and some books won't be, and that like you have to follow this sort of intuitive creative guidance, and that your job is to offer it and to steward it, right? Yeah. And to pour what you can. And I think like I'm really heartened to hear that it could show you, I feel like we learned enough about you today to know that like everyone's welcome at the fire pit, but it doesn't mean everybody's ready for it. And that's okay. And just kind of holding your own your own brightness, I think that's like half the battle in being a person who likes language, who likes writing and language and storytelling. So, yeah. So, okay. Well, thanks so much. I feel like we've seen some good comments coming through. Does anybody have a question that they'd like to ask Jen? I feel like you've planted a couple seeds here. We might have some workshops to do in the future to help folks iron out their own, like, their neighborhood checklist and a thing that they can. I think we've got some workshops to do, Jen. But I want to just pause. Does anybody have a question? Feel free to raise your hand. I can unmute you and just ask Jen anything about what she shared. Here, look in the chat really quick. I'm not sharing my screen. Yeah. Oh, Julie said a great description of invitation to engagement. Yeah, I really, really like that. I think when we get really wonky about dragging people across the finish line rather than like kind of working with the flow of people's attention, it just creates something creatively open. So, all right. All right, Jen Z asks, did you say you came up with the checklist on your own or in partnership with Subsite?
I would say in partnership. I asked it to create a checklist. And so there was some, and maybe this might be a good point to share my screen real quick. Yeah. And I, share this tab. Amanda, this isn't in the actual tool because I've pulled it into a Google Doc so I can search it. Okay. So basically, through, so here's where I plugged in an essay, and this just shows you what it spits out. I say run this through the relational essay. And first of all, it's very encouraging. It's a masterclass. Thank you. I know I'm so smart. And so so these are my checklists where it says, you know, pass, like this was good. This relational checklist was strong. This one was excellent. And then down here, it will give me recommendations for some shifts to make or some changes to make. And then it always gives me something to try, to watch for, and then, you know, to benchmark things. And so that's what I've been doing there. And so the way that came about was as Subsite, as I was asking things and it was coming back to me with, oh, you have this observer participant voice and people really, you know, connect strongly with this. And so I was asking it, what are I think one of the questions I said was, what are some themes that connect my top posts, right? So I have these top performing posts. What are the themes that connect them? And then it came back with some descriptions of like, this is strong, this is strong, this is strong. And then I said, okay, I would like to create a checklist. And so then I said, and then I copied and pasted those suggestions back into it. And I said, let's make these the checklist, right? So then it was like, great. And so then it repeated back to me what the checklist was. And then we did some more talking and something else came up, which I mentioned earlier, which was the utility lens. And I was like, oh, let's add the utility lens to the relational checklist. And so then it pumped everything back out again. And it now it was a 5-thing checklist and it went to 6. So to answer the question, I asked it to create the checklist, but it was based on some of the things that it was reflecting back to me from the data. And it was naming things. And like I've said this before, it sort of attaches the information in a way that was like, it was narrative, it was storytelling. And so I was, you know, able to create those type of checklists. So I hope that answers that question. I was giving it instructions to do that. And same thing with the neighborhood map. You know, I was like, let's name this the neighborhood map. And so I have sidewalk, front yard, porch, and fire pit. And so when I ask it to help me evaluate it against a neighborhood map, I solidified those. And every once in a while, I'll have to copy it back into the tool and say, as a reminder, here's what the neighborhood map is. Because sometimes in some of the back and forth things, it can get a little expansive. So I just always want to bring it back down to reminding it what the list is.
I think, so Paulette asked if subsite's included in the mentorship. It's actually included in the paid subscription. So like you can have just a paid subscription and work independently with your own data. The mentorship is where we really put a lot of the sort of publishing sort of principles into action and host things like this. We host office hours and kind of folks kind of cross the journey into more intentional publishing with the support of the mentorship. But I made it intentionally available to folks who just wanted to work with their data independently, because I know a lot of people have their support systems already built and just need a data tool. So yeah. Right.
One other thing is that I have a pretty clear idea of, let's see, what was I going to say? I've had to talk back to it a few times. There was a point in time when I was making a shift from one theme or topic and I wanted to move on from that. And I was trying to figure out how to do that without giving my readers sort of a topical whiplash. And so it introduced this concept of braiding themes, where I would start talking about something and braiding it into the current thing so that I could move it over. And that was really great. And that was really helpful. But it was pushing me to do it a little bit too fast. Like, for your next post, try this. And I was like, nope, not ready for that. I need this, this, and this. And it would come back and it would do it. So I think for me, knowing what I want and where I want to go, and then not letting myself get distracted by what it might think I want to do. And I can pull it back and say, like, no, actually, I want to do a little bit more work in here. And so then it's been a real back and forth to try to keep it with, no, this is what I want to do. Oh, but that's a great idea. I think I do want to try that. And so it's been a little bit of a back and forth like that, but just an encouragement, if you've never worked with a tool like this before, to just keep in mind that, like, you're the boss.
Yep. And you're the boss. It's your data. You're the boss.
Yeah. And I've also had it clarify things, because last week it started giving me like essay type 5 and pattern thing type 1. And I was like, oh, this is new. Amanda's been tweaking it behind the scenes again. And so I said, please define all essay types and patterns mentioned. And so then it went back and was like, oh, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. And then it would list all the definitions out. I was like, oh, this is cool. So you can even ask it to define things if you're not clear. And that was helpful to me. So.
Vicky said, I'd love to ask Jen about how she got Subsite to figure out about the churn of less engaged subscribers. I think that was your second month of uploading data, because it can't track it from one CSV. It's got to have the trend. It's got to compare month over month. But sorry, I answered the question and I will let you answer it.
No, that's exactly right. It was, I'm going to try to find that one. It came from when I uploaded the data a second time. So it had a comparison over 30 days, and it was able to tell me, the types of subscribers who had dropped off and like where the numbers were at that point. So.
It's a really interesting, I want to say like conundrum, because a lot of folks say like, well, I don't want to use data to like change who I am creatively.
Mm-hmm.
And your data can only help you if you show up with creative courage month over month to give your voice to the world. So the data can then like talk to you about it. And there was a moment for me where I realized, like, I want these insights, but I have to take the step first. And this was several years ago. Like, I want the insights to know where I should kind of tweak, but I also have to take the risk first. And so that's the interesting part about publishing, I think, in a public way, is that there's risk. there's risk in all things. And I think I've successfully built the tools so that it's not about pushing you away from the risk, but like recentering around what you actually want to be giving to the world from your voice, rather than like, we know this one trend, therefore do it this way. Because to me, that doesn't make me more creatively courageous. That just makes me feel like I may not do it right, and therefore I might. But I'll let you speak to that, Jen.
Yeah, one of the things that I've really appreciated in the responses that come back to me is when I, ask it to run against my checklist, it'll say, this is good. Here's why it works, and it will explain why it works based on the data it has and the engagement, right? It'll say it reflects back to these strong areas where there's been a high engagement, and then it will and so there's always a why it works. Let's see, what was it? Here's the move. It's the move. What's the move? And it'll say, this is what you said, this quote here, why it works, and it works because of this. And so that helps me in my thinking, right? So it's not just telling me, yep, this is good, meets the checklist. It's like, here's why it matters. And then I can be like, okay. And then I'll go put that out there, publish it. And then I'll be like, did that pan out that way or not? So it's not, I'm not blindly following it. It's like, okay, well, this thing said, and I'm going to put it out there. It felt comfortable to me, like for it to say, not just, hey, this is great, but it's like, here's why it works based on all of this information. So then I can make those decisions. And, sometimes I don't do it the way it suggests. And that's also a risk, that's also a decision I'm making. And so I think, and there's the one thing I haven't been able to crack is to be able to sort my subscriber list the way I want it to, in terms of you can't pull, like, there's the people who read you via email, and there's people who read you in the inbox of the app. And there's not a way to sort that data that I have figured out where it gets both of those groups together in the same type of sort. So I sent out a couple of emails on the back end over the weekend that I was trying to capture some of these like segment groups. And so I was trying to sort the data. And that was a little bit of that didn't really quite work out the way I wanted to, in terms of like who ended up on that list. Because I was trying to get people on the list who were like a little bit lower engaged or had been kind of dropped off for a while. And I don't think it necessarily hit that. So they all got this email like, hey, if you haven't been around for a while. And I'm like, oh, wow, I look a little dumb, and that's okay. Like, I tried something, right? And so now I know that I need to figure something out. And so that, to me, that was a risk worth taking, because I just wanted to see what would happen if I did it. And I also was hoping some folks would drop off and unsubscribe from that particular category. So it was a low risk, right? If they unsubscribed, it was like, so what? So yeah, there is an inherent risk to putting yourself out there and trying things, but I'm having fun doing it. So
I think what you're describing is the segmenting inside Substack to send one-time emails. Yeah, this is notoriously inflexible and unreliable. So like I tell anybody who wants to, because those kinds of one-time emails are really important for like trying to test and pull people into different levels of engagement. But it's very, very wonky. It is not a stable feature inside Substack. And if you do more than one filter, and even sometimes the one filter, I'm going to tell people like, check it and check it and check it and check what it thinks it's just filtered inside Substack. Do not send sensitive information using their segmenting tool. I've run into that a lot. So, but luckily for most folks who are trying to grow, you can, just as an engaged versus not engaged, I have had good luck with sending anybody who has an activity rating of 4 stars and higher. It can filter pretty reliably on stars up and stars down. And you can kind of double check the clusters of how many should generally be 4 stars and up, and kind of do a very simple nurturing campaign for that sort of that mix. But yeah, man, if you add in more stuff, it's just, it struggles. It's on the struggle bus there.
Yeah.
Well, but I think ultimately, like, what Substack's goal is for you to build a publication that nurtures through the really good content that you're already putting out there, like the posts and the things that you're doing. These are just kind of extra sort of tweaks when you're trying to mold it. And I think that's ultimately what the next couple of years Substack's going to have to like answer for, is like when we want to put in more shape to mold people into the next space of our publication, like what tools can they reasonably make available without it becoming very, very expensive to run and changing kind of the way they've set it up. So cool. Any more questions? So typically office hours is like a ask me anything, where I just kind of make myself available to folks, and we kind of run around publication questions. But I wanted to invite Jen because I felt like you have a very interesting editorial brain you brought in. So before I steer us in a slightly different direction, does anybody else have questions about what Jen shared? Really okay if not. Okay, I'm going to unpin you, Jen. Oh, did you have something?
I just wanted to, I was thinking, the question that was asked earlier about did Subsite create the checklist, or was it a collaboration? I just want to emphasize that the things that I named it and the checklists I created and the frameworks was based on the information it was reflecting back to me of my own data. So if you are going to try that in your own thing, like yours might not be called a relational checklist, or yours might not be called a neighborhood map. But like if you just start asking it questions out of pure curiosity and just to kind of help you make connections about like what, like a good question would be in my mind, like what are the themes that connect, or what is a pattern that connects my top 5 posts, right? And then it'll start to reflect that back to you, and then you can use that, the language that it picks up, you can start to use that to shape, and that'll resonate with you creatively too, right? You have in your own mind like what resonates with you as you're creating something, and it'll reflect back to you what your readers are creating. And so then you can start to generate your own checklists kind of based on that relationship that you have with the data and what it's revealing to you. So it may look specifically different for you, but like you can ask it to just like create that list based on some of those things. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. I think also, I think also it's really important that like you shape how much you want to move intuitively through your publishing style. And the Subsite is actually quite agile. Like it's not assuming that you want to become some wonky person who only is here for monetization and just wants to work really hard at squeezing dollars out of everybody. There's a real identity piece for each person to hold and to creatively construct how much intentionality you put around your publication, and how much you really need this to be more flexible. So like everything Jen shared today, I would just offer that like it's very malleable. And like that's what I would want for everyone here, is that you think about it as like a malleable tool that helps you write more confidently and grow your readership, and then kind of ride the wave together of like what that looks like month over month. So yeah, I wanted to just say that. Julie says, this is so helpful hearing what kinds of tools Subsite has created with Jen. More of this info will be welcome over time. Yeah, no, this is sort of the interesting thing about making like a tool that kind of has almost a paralyzing amount of information and customization, because it's taking all of your posts, it's taking all of your subscriber data, and it's weaving a story of your own experience. And I literally can't capture it all. Like we're in month 2 of beta, and I think this is the only reasonable way I can think of, which is to invite other people to come in and say, here's how I use my data to relate to my writing voice and to relate to my readers. Because I think we all fall inside caring about our voice and the message we're giving, and we care about our readership. And then everything else is just, it's so variant. So thanks for that feedback, because I think more examples like this will be important, and we'll hear from other folks. I think Jen Baxter, I think she's on the call. We're going to chat next month about like how authors can use Subsite to like help think through. I think first, there's a lot of layers there, but like, how do you make sure you're set up well on Substack? And then like, how do you use your data to learn about your audience? I think that's really important. That's one of the reasons Jen and I, first connected, is because she started to get serious about this book thing. And well, books need readers, just without them, like, what are we doing here? And we're set in such a creative, an expansive place in the definition of publishing that I think your data is what publishers wish they had. Just remember that, my friends, that they have not done the work of learning about how audiences move through books and relate to them, but you are already. So if you need encouragement to start writing a book, just remember you have data that they want. And when you write, and you can write well, you have a treasure trove without realizing it. I heard a ding in the chat. I don't have it up. Yes. Oh yes, Jen's here. Perfect. Okay, so this was really lovely. I'm noting the time, and I wanted to make an announcement about something that's going to start in June as part of the publishing mentorship. So right now we typically meet once a month for these sort of strategic touch-ins. Like, we talk about how things are moving. Some folks ask data questions, some folks ask writing questions. And I've been feeling like we need a space to work with the actual texture of our own creative intuition as part of like what does mentorship mean in publishing? It's not just the strategy, it's the inner work. And so what I've kind of designed, if it's okay for me to talk to you all about this, so I've been an editor for almost 20 years now, which is really weird to say out loud. And I've worked inside different co-writing spaces. And what I've come up with is what I'm calling a co-writing studio, where we'll meet for 90 minutes once a month. Our mentorship can come together, and I'm going to bring a prompt and a few variations around it that I have learned in my years helps open up a different channel of creativity and honesty. This is weaving in more of my contemplative background than I have typically let come forward in my publishing spectrum work. But I feel in this new season of life, I'm going to model a slight pivot for y'all and invite you into a place where we learn how to co-write together. And I will make myself available to have breakout sessions when you get stuck in the flow of responding to the question. And next month's theme is going to be all about your storytelling heritage. So we're going to go into the place where story was first planted. And I'm going to have 3 questions you can choose from. And the point of it is to excavate privately, but in community and in safety. So if you're interested in understanding where does story get planted, where does it get stuck, I'm going to have a question to start excavating around where do we get stuck creatively. Because I think that, to me, is actually the substance of what makes a publication come to life. And I want to start nurturing that in all of you, to start finding the places where I think we get stuck psychologically, we get stuck emotionally, we get stuck somatically. I'm a trained meditation instructor, so I'm going to have tools that if you want to jump into a one-on-one, I'm going to make about 5 minutes. We can walk through somatically where you feel stuck, because I'm not asking light questions. We're going to go into the deep places, and you don't have to do it alone. And that's the whole point, is that we open the door, and you can opt out too. Nobody's forced to come to any of these, but I picked storytelling heritage because I think it's rich and it's layered. And I think it's the ground where a lot of folks get stuck when they start to try to put their work online. And so I want to start working on that material together in a private and safe space. And trying to kind of create a hybrid access for editorial access to me and to our community. So if anybody has questions about that, feel free to ask or reach out to me privately, but that will start in June. And my plan is to make them the third Mondays of every month, barring any major life transitions that I have to navigate. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's see. What time? I think right now I have organized it to be 2:30 in the afternoons Central. So I'm doing afternoon times, but this is something that I'm going to be getting better about polling. And I might make these more variable since they're co-writing sessions where like the energy of the group really matters. And so if we need to shift to a time that works a little better, I'm going to try and be a little more responsive. I just also need feedback on the timing. So these are in the mornings. Next month we'll start an afternoon co-writing session. So co-writing studio. So yeah. Oh, thanks, Jen. I don't even know what to ask yet, but I then thanks. Yeah, very, very excited. I have can I share something personal before we head out? We head out. Because I think I'm supposed to share this right now. Oh good, I'm so glad it'll work for Sean. I lived in isolation in the mountains of Colorado for 4 years. And it was one of the hardest seasons of my life. It was creatively productive. It changed me from the inside out. I spent years going through all my meditation books, every single kind of like searching you could do. And I recognized both the pain of that and the gift of that. And I just walked my property and I just kept saying, I promise to give this back. I promise to give this back. I promise to give this back. And because it was changing something in me. And I feel like I'm finally able to make good on that. So all of my books and my studies and the teachers I've studied with, I'm bringing into these co-writing studios where we're going to work with the texture of the heart, because I think the heart is where language first gets planted. And I want to help pull that through and share those resources with you. So yeah, so don't be surprised if we ever start one with listening to forests of pine trees, because that was my sensory setting. And we're going to work with everything that was handed to me in those 4 years that I promised to be a good steward of, even though I had no idea how my life would look all these years later. So thank you for letting me share that. Hope is a weird word in Buddhism, so we don't work much with hope, but I'm confident of what will come through for each of you when we do this kind of work. So if anybody has questions, thank you for your hearts. I'm so excited we're starting to use Google Meet a little more naturally. I know everybody's used to Zoom, but yeah, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Jen, for sharing all of your brilliance. There will be a replay. I'll be pulling the transcript together and trying to pull together the questions he asked, so y'all can go back in and just think through how you do or don't want to apply an editorial brain to the work that you're doing. Yeah, so I love it. I'm very thankful for all of you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Y'all have a great day. Bye.